She wanted to embarrass him. Instead, she gave him the stage of a lifetime. The soft glow of candlelight flickered against polished wine glasses, reflecting the quiet elegance of Bellarive Steakhouse, one of the most expensive restaurants in Nashville, Tennessee. The kind of place where money wasn't just spent, it was flaunted. Where the scent of dry-aged steak and truffle butter filled the air, and conversations were spoken just loud enough to remind others of their status. At a round table near the center of the dining room, a group of 4 well-dressed socialites laughed over cocktails. Their voices carried an air of entitlement, their presence demanding attention. Leading them was Victoria Lancaster, a woman who had never heard the word no in her life. Her father owned half the commercial buildings downtown, her mother was a former pageant queen, and she had been raised believing the world existed for her entertainment. She tapped her long, manicured nails against the stem of her glass, her red lips curling into an amused smirk as she watched the young waiter approaching their table. His name was Dante Brooks. Mid-30s, quiet. The kind of man who did his job with efficiency and respect, but never drew attention to himself. His uniform, crisp white shirt, black vest, polished shoes, was flawless, though he had adjusted it countless times to keep it from feeling suffocating. He had been working here for nearly a year, saving every penny to help his mother with medical bills and, hopefully, return to his true passion, music. But music didn't pay the bills, not yet. So here he was, balancing a tray with the group's next round of drinks, ignoring the stares from the other tables and keeping his head down. As he placed Victoria's cocktail in front of her, she leaned forward slightly, tilting her head as if inspecting him. "You look like someone with a hidden talent," she mused, her voice laced with the kind of curiosity that wasn't genuine. More like a cat toying with a mouse. Dante didn't respond immediately. He'd dealt with people like this before. Those who assumed their wealth gave them the right to treat others as entertainment. He simply offered a polite nod. "Just here to serve, ma'am." But that wasn't enough for Victoria. She exchanged a glance with her friends, her smirk widening. "Oh, come on. You must have something special about you. What is it?" She tapped a perfectly manicured finger against the table. "A party trick? A fun fact?" Dante shifted uncomfortably. "Just a regular guy, ma'am." Her friend, a man wearing an overpriced suit and an ego even bigger than his watch, chuckled. "Regular? Nah, man, we don't believe that." Victoria's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. An idea. "You know what? I think you should sing for us." Dante's hand tightened slightly around the edge of the tray. His pulse quickened, but his face remained neutral. He had heard worse requests, endured worse humiliations. Still, he hesitated. "Sing," Victoria repeated, this time loud enough that a few nearby tables turned to watch. "Come on, don't be shy." Her friends giggled, clearly entertained by the situation. Dante's jaw tensed. He wanted to walk away, wanted to tell them exactly where they could shove their amusement. But he needed this job. Rent was due. His mother's next appointment wasn't going to pay for itself. So he stood there, weighing his options. But Victoria wasn't finished yet. Victoria leaned back in her chair, swirling her drink as she studied Dante like a child poking at an insect just to see how it would react. Her friends, equally amused, exchanged knowing smirks. They weren't asking him to sing, they were demanding it. Dante remained silent, his grip tightening around the tray. He could feel the weight of the restaurant's gaze shifting toward him. A few guests pretended not to notice, focusing on their overpriced entrees. Others stole glances, waiting to see what would happen next. One of Victoria's friends, a man with slicked back hair and an arrogant smirk, leaned forward. "What, you can't sing?" he taunted. "Or are you just one of those too proud types?" Dante exhaled slowly through his nose. He had learned long ago that pride wasn't a luxury he could afford. "I'm just here to do my job," he said calmly, keeping his voice steady. Victoria wasn't satisfied. She clapped her hands together, loud enough to draw even more attention. "Oh, come on. It's just a little fun. I'm sure you have a decent voice. Don't be such a buzzkill." Her words carried that syrupy sweetness that masked something far more toxic. An unspoken message that she was in control, that he was expected to perform like some kind of novelty act. Dante stole a glance at his manager, who stood near the bar, pretending to check inventory, but clearly aware of what was happening. No help would come from him, not in a place like this. A couple at a nearby table whispered to each other, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Victoria took another sip of her cocktail, then set it down with a smug smile. "Tell you what," she said, tilting her head. "If you sing, I'll leave you a great tip. Best you've ever had." Her friends chuckled, nodding in agreement. "Yeah, man, make it good, and maybe we'll make it worth your while." Dante's stomach turned. He had been in degrading situations before, but this was something different. This wasn't just about money. This was about control, about stripping him down to a spectacle for their entertainment. He could say no, walk away. But he had seen what happened to employees who refused to play along in places like this. They never lasted long. His mother's voice echoed in his head. "Pick your battles, baby. Some fights ain't worth the cost." So, with a quiet inhale, he made his decision. He would sing. But they had no idea what they were about to hear. The restaurant had fallen into an expectant hush. A few murmurs, the clinking of silverware, the faint hum of background jazz. But all eyes were on Dante now. Victoria leaned forward, her smirk widening. She had won, or so she thought. Dante set down his tray on the nearest empty table, straightened his vest, and took a slow breath. His heart pounded, but not from fear. This wasn't a performance for them. This was for him. He closed his eyes for half a second, just long enough to shut everything else out. Then he began to sing. At first, the sound was soft, controlled, a low, rich tone that wrapped around the room like a slow, steady river. The melody was familiar, an old classic, something timeless, something real. And then it grew. His voice deepened, pulling from a place no one in that restaurant had ever dared to understand. It wasn't just singing. It was something raw, something that cracked open the air and demanded to be felt. Every note carried years of struggle, resilience, and quiet strength. The laughter at Victoria's table died almost instantly. The smirks faded. Her friend, the one who had been taunting him moments before, sat frozen, mouth slightly open. A few guests turned fully in their seats, eyes wide. Conversations stopped. Even the bartender, in the middle of shaking a cocktail, slowed his movements, eyes fixed on the man who was no longer just a waiter, but something much more. Dante didn't just hit the notes, he lived them. His voice soared effortlessly, filling every inch of the upscale restaurant, drowning out the pretense and privilege that had seemed so suffocating just moments before. A server passing by stopped in his tracks, tray trembling in his hands. The restaurant manager, the same one who had chosen to ignore the situation earlier, now stood completely still behind the bar, his jaw slack. And Victoria? She wasn't smiling anymore. Her confident posture had wilted. The amusement in her eyes had turned into something else, something that almost resembled regret. But Dante wasn't looking at her anymore. He wasn't looking at anyone. He was lost in the music, in the truth of his own voice, in the power of something so undeniably his that no amount of money, privilege, or arrogance could take it from him. And when the final note rang out, hanging in the air like a heartbeat that refused to be ignored, the entire restaurant was silent. For a long moment, nothing moved. No forks scraping against plates, no whispered side conversations, no clinking of glasses, just silence. A thick, stunned silence that pressed down on the room like an unspoken truth no one knew how to acknowledge. Then, somewhere in the back, a slow clap broke the stillness. 1, 2, 3 beats of applause before another joined in. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the restaurant erupted. Guests at tables across the room stood, clapping with an energy that felt almost electric. A woman near the bar wiped her eyes, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. The bartender, who had paused mid-drink, let out a low whistle and gave a small, respectful nod. Even the other waitstaff, who had seen their fair share of humiliation disguised as fun, looked at Dante differently now. He wasn't just the quiet server anymore. He was something more. Victoria, however, wasn't clapping. Her hands remained still on the table, her carefully crafted confidence now brittle, crumbling under the weight of her own actions. She glanced around at the standing ovation, her expression shifting from surprise to discomfort. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had set this up for her amusement. She had expected him to fumble, to be flustered, to give them all a good laugh. Instead, she had handed him the spotlight, and he had owned it. Her friends, once giggling along with her, now sat awkwardly, unsure of how to react. The arrogance in their laughter had drained away, leaving only the heavy realization that they had completely miscalculated. Dante, on the other hand, simply stood there, steady, composed. He wasn't smug. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. A man at a nearby table, a record executive, though Dante didn't know it yet, pulled out his phone, typing something quickly before glancing up at him with newfound interest. Victoria cleared her throat, forcing a small, tight-lipped smile. "Well," she said, reaching for her drink, though her fingers trembled slightly around the glass. "That was unexpected." One of her friends shifted in his seat. "Yeah, man. That was, really good." Dante met her gaze for the first time since he started singing. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk. He just looked at her, his silence saying more than words ever could. She had tried to make him small, but now she was the one shrinking. The applause gradually faded, but the energy in the restaurant remained charged, buzzing with something unspoken. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone felt it. Dante glanced around, nodding slightly at those who had clapped, but he didn't linger. He picked up his tray, straightened his vest, and turned to leave, because that's what professionals do. He had nothing to prove. But before he could take a step, a voice stopped him. "Wait." Victoria. She stood now, the confident smirk from earlier completely gone. Her carefully applied mask of control had cracked, revealing something more complicated underneath. Embarrassment, maybe, or guilt. Dante turned, waiting. She hesitated, glancing around at the people still watching, then cleared her throat. She exhaled sharply, as if the words physically hurt to say. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to." Her voice trailed off. Dante didn't need to hear the rest. He knew what she was trying to say. That it was just a joke. That she hadn't expected it to go this way. That she hadn't realized what she was doing until it was too late. But the thing about moments like this? They can't be undone. Dante gave her a small, polite smile. "I hope you enjoyed your meal, ma'am." Then, with quiet dignity, he walked away. Victoria sat back down, her cheeks burning under the weight of the stares still lingering on her. The people she had hoped to impress weren't laughing anymore. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something unfamiliar: accountability. Across the room, the record executive who had been watching leaned toward his companion. "Find out his name," he murmured, still staring at Dante as he disappeared into the kitchen. "I want to talk to him." Because talent like that, it didn't belong in the background. Dante walked out of that restaurant the same way he walked in, humble, hard-working, and with his dignity intact. But now people saw him differently. Not because of his job, not because of what they assumed about him, but because he showed them who he really was. And Victoria? She learned a hard lesson that night. Respect isn't about wealth. It's not about status. It's about recognizing the value in every person you meet, because you never know who you're talking down to, and you never know what someone is capable of. So here's the question. How do you treat people when you think no one is watching? Because that says more about you than anything else. If this story made you feel something, share it. Let's remind the world that dignity can't be bought and talent can't be silenced. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.